Hello, everybody. We are live at Frightmare HQ. I want to say hello to all of our Frightmare family out there watching. We have a very, very special show for you guys today on this beautiful Sunday. First up, I want to introduce my co-host, Charles Doze. How you doing this morning, Charles, or this afternoon? We just broke into afternoon, didn't we?
We just broke into afternoon, but I'm doing good. I've just been sitting here this morning. I think I was watching Buckaroo Banzai earlier, so that kind of makes me feel good. So
Get you in the mood a little bit, doesn't it?
gets me in a mood all the time. I'm telling you.
Right. Well, let's see who we got over here to this side. Who do we
Who's that?
got, Charles? Who is this? Introduce this gentleman for us.
Well, that is the film superhero there. That's James White. James is
Woo!
joining us, and James
Hey,
is basically as Louise told me, the magic man behind a lot of these restorations that we get to see from Arrow. So I call him the superhero. Is that right, James? You're a superhero, right?
I'm not going to answer to that, but thank you very much.
Well, we think you're a superhero. You make all of our dreams come true.
Oh
Um,
shucks.
you really do. You really do. How much? So you're the head of restorations. Is that what your official
Yeah.
Yeah,
title
that
is? Or
that's kind of a. I would say that's a bit grandiose, just because we don't have a restoration staff or division. There's not like an army of little restoration, underlings or anything. It's basically me who project manages all the film restorations that Arrow does from start to finish. But we work primarily with outside labs. So here in the UK, we tend to use a number of labs that we've been working with for years. So Silver Salt Restoration, the Restore Labs, Dragon DI in Wales. We also use labs in Los Angeles, Company 3. We worked with a lot of good people like AGFA, and who you probably know from
Yep.
and
absolutely.
Vinegar Syndrome as well. So, there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of great work done behind the scenes that I cannot take full credit for. The work is done by the experts and the artists really doing this work on our behalf that I'm basically managing through the workflow.
Right. Well, we did discover something before we went live. You are not British, sir.
I am not British.
He
I
is
am
As you
not
not
guys can
British.
British.
tell.
I'm
We figured
sorry.
that out somehow. We figured out he's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
British.
yeah. It's
But you
I
you
can't
live
pull it off.
in you live overseas in the UK, right?
I do. I've lived here in Britain now for 21 years, and I moved here from New York in 2000. I worked in Sweden for a short spell, but it was unplanned. I didn't plan on sticking around in Britain that this long, but things just worked out that way. I initially joined a film company, one of those sort of independents that were all the rage in the late 90s, early 2000s, that were making a lot of independent British productions. That oh, what's the one where all the guys get their kid off? What's it called? I can't remember.
A production
There were a
company?
lot of small sort of British productions that were doing very well. So all these companies came out of the woodwork, and they would do all their sort of production and post production internally. And I joined one of those companies when an opportunity came up from a friend of mine. It didn't last long. It actually ended less than 6 months after I moved here, and but luckily I managed to secure a job with the British Film Institute after that, and was worked in archive and preservation and restoration ever since. And
How
then
do you
Arrow came calling in the, I guess, 2011, 12. So it's yeah, been working with them full time since, I guess, 2013, 2014.
So when you go back to your younger days, what was
Mhm.
the point where you were like, this is what I want to do? And how did you get to the point where you're like, now this is what I'm gonna do?
Yeah, it's funny. There's no real, because people do ask me, how do I get into film restoration and that sort of thing. There really isn't a clear path to it that I'm aware of. I mean, there are schools like the L. Jeffrey Selznick School of Film Preservation in Rochester, New York. Their focus is film restoration. A lot of universities have new parts of that. But when I was coming up, there really was no direct way. So I worked in film post-production. I worked for a variety of film labs. I worked on a lot of new films. But my interest was always more for older classic film, genre film, just things that I was less excited about what was coming out than what came out 20, 30, 50 years prior. So film history was a big thing for me. So that kind of guided my motivation, as it were. But really, I kind of had to find my own path in there. I mean, in a way, I think I've been fortunate in that the years that I was coming up, lab film production was still a thing, the whole photochemical workflow. So I got my initial, experiences were working hands-on with film material, which is great because when everything made this switch to digital, which it did in years later, and now film restoration is almost entirely digital, it gave me the background. There really was no direct way. So I what I was working with in both platforms. So, it's great because when everything made this tangible, physical, chemical properties of what film is, what you're working to achieve, even if you're working primarily in digital, having that knowledge base, I think, is valuable. I was less excited about if anybody's coming out, get into film restoration. I would just say, try to get involved in film any way you can. Just try to, get your hands on it, understand it. Film labs are still great. The film's not going anywhere. It all needs looking after. All the big studios have their big film archives and everything. So, yeah, if you can get where you can hold it and touch it, and and understand the fragility of it all, then you'd be better off for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's almost going to become like a lost art form because so many people are not exposed to film anymore. It almost has to be something specialized that you want to deal with classic films and you want to be in this sort of industry. Does that sound about right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think that, like I said, there was no direct path to it when I was. There may be a more direct way now that I'm just not aware of. But the point is, I mean,
James
I look
is
at your
basically
background and all the great films that you have back there. That kind of yes and no. I mean, I think that dialogue over the web, over different platforms and everything, that's something we didn't have either. So it's the fact that, I wouldn't say lost art just because there seemed to be a lot more interest in it now. I mean, not everybody always has the correct information. There's a lot of misinformation circulating on the web, which is, inevitable, but a lot more people are interested in the intricacies of what this work is about. And specifically when it's done wrong or when it feels like it could be done better. I mean, certainly we didn't have forums and all these places where people are going to point out, mistakes or, the ways that films have been treated in various restorations. I mean, mistakes. It's kind of it can be frustrating, especially when people get the wrong end of the stick. But it's really interesting that so many people have so much more knowledge now about it. And I think that's DVD and Blu-ray, and now there's just channels like TCM in the States and stuff. People just have a greater access to it in a way that they didn't before. So I think that's a good thing.
For example, when Arrow, like when Mike Louise and everybody is interested in securing a film for distribution, do you have kind of a say in if they should do that based on the elements that are available, or do you kind of have to just figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, yes. I mean, it's if we don't restore everything we put out. We put out a lot of new films, as you know, and for some films, the masters that are available from the licensor are perfectly decent and will work for our release. Sometimes we might take something off the shelf and give it a bit more of a polish or repair some things that were done on it. We're not starting from scratch with everything. But for the stuff where we're actually going back to the original film material and doing a full restoration, then yeah, materials are absolutely essential. And we really need to establish what those are, what the materials are in existence, and what is our access going to be to them? because yeah, we shouldn't be doing a deal for a film we want to restore if we don't know what we'd be restoring from, you know.
You don't know what
So
exists.
that's not to say that hasn't happened, and
Yeah.
still happens occasionally, but it's something that we certainly work against. I mean, I'm usually involved in the conversation about, you know, establishing what those materials are, doing tests, talking to the labs that hold the materials, all those things. So yeah, if things work the way they should work, all that's pretty much established by the time we license a title.
Well, that's good, because I'm sure it's not fun if they're like, all right, James, we're bringing out this movie. And you're like, well, what are we doing? They're like, I don't know. It's something. Here's a VHS tape. Scan it.
Yeah.
VHS, awesome. That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen so much, but with film, it's always a crapshoot. You never know. I mean, you're reading film reports on what the holdings are, and they go, oh, you've got original negative, you've got intermediate materials, you've got a theatrical print, you've got these sound materials, and that all sounds great in theory. And then you bring it to the lab for inspection, any kind of repair, scanning, and it's a mess. Or what's in the can is not what was labeled on the can, or material, it might be missing an entire reel, or one of the reels might be mangled or something. You know, you just never know until you actually start working on the material, what the actual physical issues are with the film, and whether those issues are print, you've got these sound material, a real challenge on your hands. So, you know, film is an organic, you know, it's made of crushed animal bones, you know. I mean, it's just, there's nothing guaranteed about what you're looking at until you really start, you know, dealing with it, its physical state in front of you. So yeah, you hope for the best, but you plan for the worst sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Well, that makes me wonder what might have been one of your most difficult projects. I don't know if you can share that kind of information, but
oh yeah, we've had a few, and I mean, there's all sorts of different kinds of difficulties. I'm talking about the actual physical problems of the film, where we have had issues like, I'll bring up a famous example of Nightmare City, the Umberto Lenzi film, which I'm sure you guys have seen.
Oh yeah.
The film has been available, you know, I don't think it's ever been non-widely available. It's fairly well known. Some crazy zombie scenes in that movie, the whole TV studio stuff. It's great. I love it. But it's, unfortunately, the negative, couple of the reels were kept in terrible condition, where moisture was allowed to get inside the can, and it wasn't checked over years of time, and it developed rot, chemical rot, that basically ate into the film material. So you've got sort of beautiful reel 1, and then you've got reel 2 and reel 3. I'm guessing at what the reels are because I don't remember. This is going back a while. But when you've got this horrible, you've got flicker, you've got fading, and you've got chemical damage that you can see on every other frame. And there's just, you have a decision to make, because, you know, you could spend as much as you have in your budget and only barely improve this kind of thing. So it's the kind of thing where, no, I'm not going to have $1 million to throw at it. It's Nightmare City. I will have my budget and my time frame that is, and hope to fix it within the window that I have. But we said, well, do we kill ourselves trying to restore it a little bit, or do we just put it out there and say, this is the best it's going to look for the negative for these sections? And we'll offer this other version from the prior master that was done from a substandard element as a alternative on our release, which I think is what we did. And then we put an extra, which contextualized what the damage was, why it affected the film it did the way it did. And I think I didn't get any negative response about it. Everybody really appreciated the openness about it. The fact that we just basically put it out there and said, this is what it is. And unfortunately, the neg is, this is the best it's going to look. So, you know, that's kind of an extreme example. Every film has little restoration quirks and bumps and bits, and sometimes it's limited to dirt or, you know, that sort of sparkle kind of damage. Sometimes the film is very shaky and unstable. It requires quite a bit of stabilization. Sometimes we'll have a bit of density fluctuation, or what we just call flicker. All these things are improvable to the point of, getting them to nearly disappear without affecting the image adversely. Because that's the one thing to bear in mind, is you're using very powerful restoration tools that get more and more sophisticated every year. And these are really powerful image processing tools that in the wrong hands can do terrible digital damage that you don't want to, enact at all. So you're doing a balancing act by trying to restore the film as much as you can without adversely affecting the original photochemical image. It's what I call sort of preserving the photochemical integrity of the film. So that means the film grain, the original texture, the feel of the film, the original colors. These are all kinds of things that, you don't want to impact on your efforts to restore. So really, nobody should see evidence of your restoration. You shouldn't leave any traces. It should all be invisible.
That's true. And like you mentioned Nightmare City, which I'm glad you mentioned, because that was one I was actually happy at how you guys did it, because you spelled it out that, all right, this is the original camera negative, but there's an alternate 35 millimeter transfer print. You can watch both.
I think it was a dupe neg, if I recall. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was a dupe neg, and that's one thing I love about Arrow, because a lot of times we see some. I won't mention companies by name, of course, but we see some people who drop out Blu-rays and they tell you, "Oh, we did a resto," but they don't tell you what it's from or what the resto was done on. And to me, I'm just like, well, we don't know what you did. I'd like to know more about what you did. And that kind of affects if I'm going to buy something or not, because if there's something done on an older film and they don't tell me what they did, I'm probably not going to buy it. I'm gonna be like, I don't know if it's worth my money. It's like,
no, exactly. I think the more open, really, the better. It's better for everybody, because like I say, you do see people jumping to conclusions about something, disinformation based on screen caps or just something somebody said about something. This information kind of snowballs on the internet, and it's important to have, like, I always put a restoration kind of text wording in the booklet, what the material was, what the workflow process was. It can get a bit redundant. I'm not sure how many people actually read it, but it's there if they need it. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions about any of the films that we've worked on. And I put my hand up and say, we've made mistakes before and we've learned from those mistakes. And I think that, that does happen. I think it's also, and this is where you get into, a bit of awkwardness sometimes, is you're working with filmmakers. And not always, because a lot of the films we work on, the filmmakers are dead and gone. But when we have the opportunity to work with a filmmaker, we certainly always try to. But that's not a guarantee that everything's going to go your way, because a filmmaker might look at a film that they made 20, 30 years ago as an opportunity to make changes or improvements, as it were. And that
George Lucas,
falls in, it falls into the dangerous category that I called revisionism, which is basically, that's the opposite of restoration for me.
George Lucas.
I mean, hey, I don't think I'll ever work on the Star Wars films, but happy to, if anyone wants to call me. But
absolutely.
I mean, I honestly don't have any problem with the changes that Lucas wants to make, as long as he makes the original films available.
Which he doesn't.
Dead on point. That's what we're talking about.
That's my problem. That is my problem with.
He's like, you don't want to see that old one. This is the new one. People are like, but I want to see what I saw in theaters. No, you don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Well, it's fine. If he wanted to release like a director's enhanced vision or something, yeah, but give us the original one too. I'm not going to get off on Star Wars, because that's not where.
No, I mean, but that's all I'm saying. It's probably the most well-known example of director sort of tinkering, and unfortunately, it's the original 3 films are still haven't been restored or made available in the way that they initially came out in 77, 80, and 83. And that's when I saw them, and I would want to see them again in those original forms. And I hope that'll happen someday. But yeah,
me too.
I mean, I kind of just always had the idea that a director, obviously, a lot of people work on a film. And a director can be thought of as the main creative author of a film, sure. But does the film belong to the director after it's been out and about for years? I mean, I would argue that actually the film belongs to history, and we have an obligation in restoration and preservation to maintain those versions that were initially that made their reputations in the first place. You know, I don't have any problem with directors going back, making changes, director's cuts, expanded versions, whatever you're going to do, as long as those initial versions are still maintained and kept and made available, you know. But unfortunately, that does not always happen. So
that's true.
Well,
So
if
let's
you're
use
just
them.
now joining us today, I just want to remind everybody that we are talking to James White, head of restoration for Arrow Video, Arrow Film. What is the official Arrow Video?
Oh, yeah, well, Arrow Video is the part, we're basically Arrow Films, but
Yeah.
Arrow Video is the part that you probably most would have heard of, because that's what all our releases on Blu-ray and now UHD are going through. But it's all the same group of people. It's all the same,
Gotcha.
Right.
small family.
So when we use a movie like a recent release, like here we go, Demons, right? You brought out Demons. So Demons, of course, we know it noted brand new 4K resto from the original camera negative. So when you're working on a film like Demons, I guess in the context of any other type of film, how do you get hold of the original negative, and does the restoration where it's going to be done depend on, of course, on where a lot of the film elements lie, or do you ship it somewhere special, and do you have to do something special to get it somewhere?
Well, yeah, I mean, Demons is a good example. We it's an Italian licensor, as you would imagine, Lamberto Bava Film. It's not essential for everything that we restore, but we usually take the preservation minded idea that there's no reason to move the film any great distance for what we do if we can scan it locally. So that original negative, first of all, our deal would be contingent on us getting access to those materials. So the deal that we sign, you know, automatically makes that material available to us within restrictions in terms of where it goes, how it's handled, all those kinds of things. Because, you know, an original negative is a unique element. There's only one in the world, and it's the film that went through the camera. And if that gets lost or damaged or whatever, that's it. You know, then you're stuck with secondary elements, and the film is never going to look as good as it did from that element. So we use primarily in Italy, we use the lab Immagine Ritrovata based in Bologna for our scanning. So we sent the original negative to Immagine Ritrovata. I think it was stored in Rome, so not far to go to Bologna anyway. They do a careful inspection, review of all the film material, make a note of any kind of physical issues, if there's any actual hands-on repairs that the film needs to go through. And then it's digitally scanned in 4K 16-bit and saved as DPX files, which is the industry standard that for scanning files at that size. From there, we don't really need the film anymore. The film can go back to the licensor, back in the cans, back in cold, you know, temperature, humidity, temperature controlled vaults for the next 20 years. Because primarily from that point, we're working in digital. And so we are taking those files and we are grading them. We are putting them through all the different restoration processes that we do. We have checks and reviews at each stage. Because of COVID restrictions, a lot of this that I used to oversee personally in person is now sort of going through the pipes of the internet. And, you know, I'm doing checks and reviews in different ways now because we've all had to adapt to this new way of life. But yeah, so the audio goes through the same process. It is transferred from, in those cases, we had the original stereo 5.1 and mono tracks. There's a crazy history with the soundtracks on Demons because, of course, as you probably know, it has two different English language soundtracks, one with American accents, one with English accents. And there's a different cut to Demons as well. The whole Coke can scene and the extended bit there. It's very complicated because I work with Michael McKenzie, who is one of our in-house producers and one of the great experts of post-war Italian cinema. Particularly Giallo and people like Fulci and all that. He's well versed on Demons to the point that he said, look, scan and restore everything, and then I will cut those versions together myself.
Oh, cool. That's what I was wondering, if you guys had multiple negatives or camera, you do that, or if you just cut them together.
Well, we scan. I mean, everything's coming from those initial negatives.
Mhm.
It's just that to create those secondary English versions with the slight difference in the cutting and the versions, they have to be assembled slightly differently on a timeline. But it's all basically a digital timeline. So if you worked with, iMovie or anything, it's basically the same. It's all laying it out on a timeline that way.
That's cool. I didn't know if you had like if the US version was done from like a 35 millimeter US or something. That's cool that you put them all together. So
yeah, I think I mean I have to go back and check my notes. I mean, if anything can be from the negative, that's where we would take it from. So if that material is duplicated in, secondary materials like your inner pause, your IP, your internegs, dupe negs, anything like that, then we'd still use the neg for those scenes. However, if any material is not in the neg and it's unique to those other English language materials, then we would scan it from those and we would insert them, grade them, and restore them to match as best we could. We're going to use the best source material for every version we can. It's just that for the neg, 99% of the film is the same for both versions. So we're going to use the neg for both. The audio, I know, posed some real problems there, which we're still dealing with because I think there was some great complexity in putting the stereo tracks of the American version, but I think I've got that right. But I know Michael's dealing with that, and we're currently doing a disc program for anybody who wants to get a copy with the fixed audio back for this certain scene. I don't know all the specifics of it. Michael feels terrible about it, but he did exactly the right thing, which is put his hands up and admit that, okay, we've noticed this error on the disc and we've got a disc replacement program in place for those who want just write to this address and we'll deal with it, which happens. I mean, the one thing about UHD, and I assume that you've got the UHD there, or is it just the Blu-ray?
Oh yeah, we got the 4K, the good one here.
Yeah, well, I remember the adjustments we all had to be made. I was still working for the British Film Institute then, doing the BFI DVD label there. But the adjustment from DVD to Blu-ray was enormous in terms of all the different things you had to worry about, all the things on a disc that could go wrong, the complexity from DVD, which was really straightforward, to Blu-ray, which all of a sudden was very complicated. But now for UHD, it's like a whole new world all over again. Wow. The amount of things that, I mean, we've only done a few, but they've, and that's partly because they are so complicated. There's so much to do to get right, and we just want to make sure that everything is as perfect as it can be. But it's
I guess I didn't realize that UHD was that much difficult. I thought you did like a 4K scan, and you're like, all right, it's 4K. Let's drop it on the disc. Send it out.
No. Yeah, I'm not talking so much about the restoration there. I'm talking about the authoring and the encoding and all the layers on the disc and everything, which, to be fair, I'm not really involved in. Once I hand over the restored master, it's basically out of my hands, and that's fine for me. I've got other projects going on, so I'm busy. But things can go pear-shaped in any stage, and it's important to have a full system of eyes, of QC, of people reviewing every stage to make sure that they're done right. We're all human. We all can make mistakes, but it's I've been really pleased with our UHDs so far. They've been a real labor of love for everybody involved at Arrow. So
well, that makes me think about release day. Are you on pins and needles on release day? when everybody, because every now and then I'll pop into the some of these forums, the Blu-ray collector forums, and or you just see it on Facebook, and they find a problem and it just goes viral, and it just must be. I mean, how nerve-wracking is that for you? Or do you just like try to tune out?
I guess there have been those moments where somebody points out something and you're having a little heart attack about it, and it happens on a Saturday, so you got all weekend to worry about it before you going to talk to your colleagues about it. The funny thing is that a lot of times what's flagged as an error isn't actually an error, and then if you watch the chatter over the course of 2-3 pages, they'll have figured out that it's not an error either.
Right. I've seen that a lot too.
Yeah. So people kind of come around, people sort of, have this discussion and somebody points out, oh yeah, but historically the film sounded like this at this point, or this problem, this, film always had this issue, so I don't participate in the forums because I figured that if I started, I'd never be able to stop. And so I don't
That's a
follow
good
them too
move. That's a
closely.
good choice. Not
I'd
getting involved.
love to see James and they're like, you don't know what I did. This is right. It's all good now.
It's no, I mean, the thing is, I do make mistakes, and I put my hand up if I do. We certainly try to correct for those when it happens. But what I try to do is just discourage disinformation. If I see something circulating, it's just wrong. It's just incorrect. But it's gathering snow as it rolls down the hill. So it's
I
but
just imagine it being like you've spent so much time working on this. You've had, like you were talking about, quality control. You have all this QC going on, and then oh my goodness, here's something. You know what I mean?
Here's some. It's still possible. I mean, the more eyes you get going on it through it, the more issues are questioned and things are flagged, the better off you'll be, because it's important. We're a small company. We're but everybody is really motivated, really excited about the work that we do. We've got some of the world's experts in their various fields and genres and everything, all putting their heart and soul into it. So, we are doing the best we can, but we're human like anybody else, and mistakes
Absolutely.
can be made. So.
Well, that's something that I want to point out to everybody, is that I hate seeing that when people just pile on a distributor for, a small little error, or what may not even be a real error, like you mentioned. So, you guys deserve a lot more accolades. That's why we wanted to bring someone like you on today, because you're the guy at the base of this, making it all happen. And we think you deserve a little recognition.
Definitely.
Well, I appreciate that, but I certainly want to share that credit with my colleagues in Era Production, and, like I say, all the people that are doing the great work for the Film Labs. And a special mention to my friend and colleague Dave McKenzie, who handles the majority of our UHD encodes and a lot of Blu-rays, as well as my colleagues at the Engine House, which is kind of Arrow's in-house post facility for disc authoring and a lot of other technical stuff. So, it's I'm one of a bunch of people you should be thanking. So I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, thanks to the entire team. You all deserve it.
There you go. There you go.
We do have, I just wanted to let everybody know, if you might just now be joining us, we're on live with James White, head of restoration at Arrow Films. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them here in the comments section. We're going to try to get to a couple of those. Yeah. I'm sure you wouldn't mind answering a couple of questions from the audience.
No, fire away.
Awesome. I do. Let's go ahead and start with one, and then we'll get back to some other discussion. Adam Richards says, obviously it's different for every film, but in general, what kind of time frame does a restoration take?
Yeah, I would say usually on there's certainly exceptions to this, but I'd say generally we allow anywhere from, say, 6 weeks to 3 or 4 months if we're doing a full 4K end-to-end restoration. Again, it comes down to what the budgets are. If we have a big film like The Thing or something on that level, then we will allow a bigger window of time to just make sure that we do everything to a T. If it's a smaller type of film that we don't have the same sort of budget timeline on, then we might get it done in, like I say, 6 weeks, sometimes even less. It just needs to allow for the fact that these different processes a film goes through usually don't all occur under one roof. So if the film is based in Los Angeles, it's going to be scanned in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And then the files will be sent to us in Britain. We'll do the restoration, we'll do the grade. Those are 2 different processes. We'll do the audio remastering if it requires it. So all these things, you hope that one can immediately follow the next, but we're using labs that have lots of clients like us. And it all needs to be scheduled. So we like to allow for more time than we honestly need, as much as possible anyway, just to allow for any unforeseen restoration issues, or just the fact that we're balancing our time frames with other companies like Studio Canal, BFI, Criterion, whoever else is using these same facilities for their work.
That's
Yeah.
cool. So I guess kind of another question would be like a reference would be like Demons.
Mhm.
When you're doing a movie like Demons, of course, the Demons 4K was only released in the UK. It wasn't released in the US. Um, and of course, in the US, there's another company that distributes stuff. So when you run into films like that, do you guys sometimes help each other with the restoration work that you've already done, or is it like a free for all? Like this is now ours. Do your
No,
own.
it varies. I think there's this idea that we're all fiercely competitive with each other or something, but we're friends with most of these other labels. It's a pretty small pool, and a lot of us have worked for other labels. I mentioned Criterion. We're all good friends with the folks at Criterion. We have shared our masters and our extras and worked together on various things over the years. We work with Kino Lorber occasionally. Synapse, who is
Mhm.
the U.S. distributor that does Demons. We're friendly with Synapse, friendly with Severin, certainly friendly with Vinegar Syndrome, AGFA, all these other smaller labels, as well as some of the bigger ones, Studio Canal here, and even the major studios that we're licensing things from. We might be restoring something that they themselves will put out in their own territory, like say Waterworld, for instance, we restored for the UK only, and then Universal turned around, used our master, and put it out for their release. So it's sometimes it's just a business. That you're getting into it, knowing that the master that you're working on is going to be shared, is going to be distributed in other territories. Um, if possible, you'd like your release to have some time in the sun before that
Mhm.
happens. So credit is due, is who's worked on that master, who's done that restoration. But I think that we're all sort of doing, all the labels I mentioned are trying to do the same thing, trying to do the best work possible. And the more we can kind of help each other, the better. I mean, it's disheartening to me to hear when, and I'm not going to name none of the labels I mentioned, but when I hear about somebody licensing something that we really wanted,
Oh
that I
yeah.
feel like, oh, well, that's a shame, because that film's probably not going to be given the kind of attention that we or Criterion or another way would give it. And I think that that's too bad for the film, and that's too bad for fans of that film. But that's I think that that's less and less a thing now, just because the example that we and other labels that I mentioned have kind of set, people are a lot more, considerate of these things. People know that people appreciate that extra work, and doing the best you can by the film. So, yeah, I forget what the original question was. I'm sorry, but
No, no,
but
no.
yeah, bottom line, we work more in collaboration than in competition with these
That
other people.
that's good. Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering because I see sometimes, like I'll see Arrow bring something out that's for UK that says new restoration. And then another
Oh
company may
yeah,
bring
yeah,
something out that says in the US, a whole different company that says, oh, this is a restoration as well. I guess it's kind
yeah.
of like, are there two separate restorations going on? Do you guys compare them to each other? Like, look, mine's better than yours.
Yeah, I'd say usually, I mean, if they're coming out in the same time frame, then it's silly to have two separate restorations. I mean, Demons, Arrow put out a release of Demons, I think the year I joined, which I had nothing to do with. That was an
Mhm.
old Italian master. It was before I'd started doing proper restoration for Arrow. And then Synapse followed a few years later with their Blu-rays, which I think, were certainly the best looking masters, best looking releases of those films, up until ours, which we've just done, because we went back to the NEG, did a full 4K workflow through. It's possible that Synapse might end up putting out a 4K UHD of Demons as well. I don't know. I don't know what their plans are.
Yeah.
Whether we share our master or whether some other agreement is reached, I couldn't say specifically to Demons, but that does happen a lot. We try to license titles that we can release in both territories because, as you would imagine, funding a full 4K restoration in particular,
Not easy.
it's not easy, and we make our money back. Well, we can expect to a lot more easily if we know we're releasing in both those territories, but it's not always possible. And Demons was such a strong title for the UK that I'm sure that, it's been in our catalog for a long time. It's a great film. Demons 2, is a good film. But,
They're great. Hey,
it's
you guys
they're
can release
fun.
them in the
They're,
UK. I mean, you release them in
yeah,
the UK. All I do is import them over here and I watch them, so it's fine.
yeah, they're great. They're hilarious. I mean, I really enjoy them. But the point is that um, if you have a UHD player, as you
Yep.
know, you could watch it on from anywhere in the world. It doesn't
Yep.
have the region coding blockade
Like
that Blu-ray
like Blu-ray.
has. So,
Well, I'm not saying I have a region-free Blu-ray player too, but let's just say I import a lot of stuff that we don't get here. Let's just
fair
do that.
enough. Fair enough.
So I have a question about you personally. Is there a film out there that needs restoration that
That's a
you
good
would
question.
love to
Oh,
get
yeah.
your hands on?
Is it Battle for
Yeah, I
Earth?
mean, yeah, gosh, Battlefield. Jesus. I don't. Yeah, maybe should I give that another look? I saw it when it came out. I don't know. I don't know.
No,
That's
you should
yeah.
not.
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is my my background before I joined Arrow was not so specifically horror genre. I came from more of a classic kind of canon kind of filmmaking. So when I worked on the BFI, a lot of silent cinema, a lot of classic British cinema. It's really only in the last 10, 12 years that I've had to kind of go back and learn a lot of this genre stuff. And that's been working closely with people like, say, Stephen Thrower, who wrote, Nightmare USA and the seminal book on Lucio Fulci. My colleague Ewan Kant, who is the guy who, more than anyone else at Arrow, responsible for finding and bringing these little-known, lesser-known slasher films of the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s to light for us to do proper definitive releases with. So it's just luck that I've been working with a team that's really helped educate me on a lot of these films. But it's through those discoveries of working on a lot of these films that I never saw before, like I don't know, I'll bring up one that I never even heard of before, the Fifth Chord.
Mhm.
It's a Italian film we put out, I think, 2 years ago. It was sort of a sister release to The Possessed by the same director. But it's an early sort of prototypical giallo in black and white. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant film. And I loved working on it. The film material was in such good shape. I think partly because no one really ever saw it.
Yeah.
The film material was probably not handled from that initial release. So it was in very good shape, but it's got a very dreamy, nightmarish aspect. That I think is really just it's a remarkable film. I want more people to discover it. But what I mean is the kind of films that I would say answer to that question back 20 years ago would be, Magnificent Ambersons or Greed or any of the kind of benchmark kind of classic cinema that we all want to see properly restored.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'd love to find the negative to Messiah of Evil. I'd love to find some of the hard to find originals Jose Larraz movies that are only available in terrible copies.
Horrible VHS
we're
transfers and some of those.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. And working on Vampires and Whirlpool and Coming of Sin a couple of years ago really opened my eyes to him, because I'm a big sort of Euro Euro sleaze, what do you want to call it? But like the Jess Francos and the Jean Rollins and that sort of genre, all the stuff that people like Pete Toombs write about in their books. But yeah, just these wonderful artists working within these kind of lesser heralded genres of underground sort of horror and films like that just, there's some diamonds in there. And unfortunately, this is part of the problem, is that the materials for these films, these weren't made for big studios. They were often made for any
they weren't
number
handled right. They weren't
exactly
handled good,
and what happened to the film materials, because the original film labs all closed, and where did this film go? And the producer is dead, or this producer sued this other producer.
Sometimes people find them in a garage or something at random. They're like, what's this movie? And it's like original negative or something. You're like, what?
Exactly. And that does happen. So we are, but it's often just needle in a haystack kind of stuff. So those kinds of films, the kind of lesser known, let's take a film like what's the Mario Bava one that we did a few years ago? The one with the little doll. Not Hatchet for a Honeymoon.
I'm
hold
trying
on,
to
I'm just
think of
gonna
it
look.
too. I can't. Go ahead.
Yeah.
$5 for an August moon, was that it?
No, that's a good one, but that's not the one I'm thinking of.
Oh, I thought you said dolls. I was like, $5?
Yeah, no. Hold on, it's just gonna look it up because it's really bothering me. Excuse me for one sec.
By the way, while you're doing that, there's
Yeah.
a bunch of people there. They have things that they'd like to see released. I'm
Oh,
seeing.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing. Robert Hand has said his Daimajin coming statewide. Somebody's hoping for Phantom of the Mall.
Phantom of the
Oh,
Mall.
yeah. Yeah.
Somebody also asked about David Lynch's Dune.
Yes. I think I can say that in most of those cases, people are going to be happy. I can't make official announcements in that regard.
Sure, yeah.
But I can say in every one of those cases, I think that they're going to be pleased with the results in the months to come. So yes,
Awesome.
just because we haven't made any kind of official release, any announcements about this stuff, but I think that I think they're going to be pleased with the news on all those films. So
That's
we
exciting.
like that. We like
yeah,
that.
the one I was thinking of, sorry, was Kill Baby Kill.
Kill Baby Kill.
And,
Okay.
Seminal Bava film. And here's a film that unfortunately no one knows where the neg is. So it's one of those things where materials are in Germany, materials are in Italy, materials are in the States, but none of this is original neg, or at least none of it has been identified as such. So
Right.
it's again, it's a film that you think seminal in Bava's catalog, really should do a full 4K from the neg and everything else, but that hasn't been able to happen. So we've done the next best thing. Our Blu-ray is from, I think, an interneg, which is the best element in that we've managed to locate. But it is, it's still something I'd love to go back and do properly from the neg if it's ever found.
And
Yeah,
the interneg
because-
is interneg struck from the original negative, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, it is after it's basically there's the because you have to go from a negative to a positive to a negative.
Yeah.
So in order to make so in order to make a negative, you need to make a positive element first.
So you go
so
inner
it's
positive and then inner negative. So it's like two
Exactly.
over.
Two
Okay.
generations. Yeah. Yeah. So not quite up there with the neg, but beggars can't be choosers on
Yeah.
some of these films, particularly the lesser known horror stuff that we're talking about. These things weren't kept, and you're doing all the detective work, or my colleague Ewan is in those cases, and we're trying to locate the best possible materials. What's frustrating sometimes is that you settle on something after a few months of looking for it, and then you get to work on a restoration from something that isn't the neg, but it's the best you've been able to find. Maybe it's an intermediate, maybe it's just a really good theatrical print, if that's all you have to settle for.
Yeah.
And then you get done with it, and then somebody comes out of the woodwork and say, hey, here's the neg, just found it. So
I know one I would love to see. There's two I would love to see that have never been out at all. One is Blood Beach. Blood Beach has never been released, and the other one is The Keep. And The Keep has never been released on anything good either.
No, The Keep, I think there's a long legal issue with The Keep and Michael Mann and the studio. It's something that is on most people's lists of their, films that they would love to ever. I certainly would. And James Flower, another producer who works for Arrow, is a huge fan of the film.
Yeah,
James.
Yes.
James is he's an acolyte for The Keep, so he really would love us to do The Keep. Could happen, I would love for it to happen. Yeah. Sorry, what was the other one you mentioned? The
Blood Beach. Blood Beach, yeah.
I had a poster for Blood Beach in my room when I was like 13. It's the one where the woman is getting like waist down in the sand, right?
In the sand, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's like,
yeah.
Never been released on anything. Never been released on anything but like I think a really horrible DVD transfer from like a VHS.
Oh yeah,
that's weird. I think it's strange that it hasn't. You'd think that if
some
we
of them
had
are
done
weird, right?
Shout Factory, somebody would have gotten around to it by now. But I have to think that maybe it's a legal issue. Maybe it's one of those films that, that just needs to get resolved in
It
court.
it seems like all of these issues either boil down to an elements issue, whether there's just no elements are available, or there's all kinds of crazy legal issues. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's other things. But
Yeah.
that's got to be pretty frustrating. Yeah, I know it frustrates the fans a lot.
It's
Yeah.
frustrating, especially if you know the film is there. If you've
Mhm.
identified that, the neg's sitting there, it's probably in beautiful shape. Let's get to work on it. The filmmakers are keen to do it. You've got the original director wanting to do it. And yet, because of legal problems, maybe it's the original production, maybe it's a handful of it, maybe the film had several producers and they're not agreeing on something or other. Somebody, the lab has to hold it, they can't allow access. It could be any of these combination of things, but either way, it's keeping you from getting to that film and doing right by the film, which is, it can be very frustrating. It's, sometimes we stick it out and it can last for a couple of years before we're able to get our hands on the film. And sometimes we just have to move on.
I think one of the most famous examples of that is the Andy Warhol films.
Dracula and Frankenstein.
What's his name? The
Yeah.
director just chooses not to want to distribute them anymore. He's done.
It's weird. I mean, I have those old Criterion DVD copies of those.
You're a lucky man.
But, well, yeah, I mean, I who knows where they are? They're buried under piles of stuff. But those are films I would love to see getting proper restorations from. I don't know you might know more than I do about those, but if Paul Morrissey is just blocking any
Paul
kind of
Morrissey,
distribution,
he doesn't want to do a distro on them, so they've all just been hanging out. Everybody wants them.
Yeah,
It's a shame.
he apparently he's just not interested in putting them out anymore. But
Well,
that happens.
again,
I don't know.
Well, let somebody else do it is my response.
From what I've heard, people have come to him and offered to roll out the red carpet and take care of it, but he's just not interested. I don't know why.
That's weird, right?
Must be something
strange.
personal.
I mean, you do meet some characters. You're probably familiar with Withnail and I, which we put out a few years ago.
Yes.
Bruce Robinson, famous British director of Withnail and I, and not a whole lot more than that. Just decided years ago he wanted nothing to do with the film or working on the film in any capacity. We always ask him, and he's polite and is just rebuffing us, but he did not want to deal with anything to do with it. He's just moved on with his life and doesn't want to, which is fine. It didn't prevent us from doing it. And we work very closely with the DOP, Peter Hammond, who's fantastic cinematographer. So we have, for all respect, the definitive version of Withnail and I. But it would have been nice to have Bruce Robinson if he had a change of heart to play a part somehow, but didn't happen.
Right. That's the break sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that list goes on and on. I mean, but I know stuff like when you guys brought out the Tetsuo movies, everybody was excited about those finally. There's just so much stuff out there that when we finally see it, that's why we call you guys superheroes, because we want these movies for 15 years. We're sitting here with our VHS copies, well, fine, I guess I'll watch this in 280i again. It's just rolling through
exactly.
here. So
No, the Tetsuo stuff, it's funny because people got so excited about that set. I think it sold out before we even released it. I didn't even get a copy. I'm still waiting on my copy of those.
I got one.
You're doing better than me.
You could ask James Louise. I'm the person known for ordering stuff 3 seconds after Arrow makes an announcement. I'm oh, here we go.
Oh, right. No, you're the guy.
I'm it's me. That's
Chrissy
demons.
Gilliland.
I'm demons. Ooh.
Yeah. I just wanted to, Chrissy Gilliland, and you may not even be able to answer this, but she says, would The Cinder, 1982, ever be on the radar for a restoration?
Could be. I don't really know the film, but I've heard the title. It comes down to availability, licensing, if it's available for us to license or if it's within a label. I imagine, given the age of the film, that it would require a restoration. That, and hopefully film materials would be readily available. Could be a contender. Well, it hasn't been discussed with me, but sometimes I'm the last to know.
I just looked it up, and it looks like Kino
it's on
Lorber
Blu-ray.
has a Blu-ray.
Oh, do they have it? Okay.
In the U.S. of this, so Chrissy, you could pick that up now.
Yeah, the
There you
Cinder.
go.
I don't know if they did a resto on it or anything, but I recall, yeah, the Cinder was dropped, and it was
Oh, wait a
it was a
minute.
decent release.
It was
Olive
Olive
Films.
Films.
Olive
Sorry,
did it.
Oh,
not Kino.
okay,
And they
okay.
usually do
Is
restorations on their films, don't they? Or
Yeah,
Kino or Olive, or because
Olive.
there's a connection there with Olive. I think that
I thought there was,
um,
yeah.
Brett Wood, I think, is the guy who worked for both
So
labels simultaneously.
Olive is the company, but I think Kino distributes it, if I'm not mistaken.
It
I don't
could
know.
be,
Maybe it
yeah. I
is.
think Kino are their distributor. And Kino puts out so much stuff I can't keep up
Kino
these
does.
days.
They're
Yeah,
usually pretty good, you know. But
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a lot of movies like that. Like I know one that I think was only released in Germany in Blu-ray was Blade in the Dark, one of the
Oh,
Bava
yeah. I've heard
movies,
that title.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great movie. And if I recall, it was only released in Germany. That's another one I'd like to see because I don't recall if anything was actually ever done with it. There's so many movies like this that were like just give
Yeah.
James all the original negatives. Just give them to James, and
No,
he'll work it out.
Look, and
no,
I'm sure James.
spread the love a little bit. You know, I can't do it all, so yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's absolutely. I mean, the thing is, people do suggest titles online or in platforms like this, and we do listen. You
Yeah,
know, so I think it's always worth asking
I know
because
what I know what Lloyd wants. Lloyd wants his Trick or Treat, 1986. That's what Lloyd
oh
wants.
wow,
I would
okay.
take that in a minute. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say talk to you. I bet Ewan's looked into that one already. For all I
I'm
know,
sure he
you know,
has.
it's it certainly sounds like one he would have been all on top of, but I
I
couldn't
need
say.
to talk to Ewan about Nail Gun Massacre and see if I can get him to
There you
do a
go.
resto on Nail Gun Massacre.
You have the
Does it need
16
one?
millimeter negative. You have the
That's
16
all
millimeter
that's
negative,
left is
don't
the
you?
16 millimeter. No, it's not even a negative. It's a 16 millimeter print. That's
It's
all
a
That's
that's left of
16
the
mil
movie.
reduction print. Was it shot in 16 or 35?
Yes,
yeah. And
That's
James, that's
it
a
was
film
shot in
that Lloyd
16. Shot in
Lloyd
16.
owns
Okay.
Lloyd owns the rights to that movie, Nail Gun Massacre, so he has
Do you?
those.
I mean,
Yeah,
I've heard of it. It's wow, fantastic.
yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we should talk about that.
It needs a good resto, but yeah, we'll get to that. I'll have my people talk to your people. And,
Okay, sounds
Can we
good.
get
Yeah,
a
yeah.
can we get a 4K HDR of Nail Gun Massacre?
oh, just imagine the yellow from the air tank going to the gun. Well, that would pop in HDR, man.
Be amazing,
Yeah,
dude. I'd be there
yeah.
for it.
You know, we should definitely find the neg for that. That's you know, going from a print, you know, wouldn't give us as impressive results as from the neg, but you know, worth a
Yeah.
try.
Well, listen, there's so many titles that this show could literally be about. Hey, how about this movie, James?
No, yeah, sure.
How
sure.
about
about
this
this one?
movie and how about that one? I mean it must. I mean, you must, like you said, you guys listen to those comments and everything, but it must get fairly redundant because you know you got to be like, yeah, this is the 16th time somebody's asked me about this title.
Yeah.
And,
No, well. Anytime we do any kind of release announcement, there's always the one asking for the hitcher, or
Oh, yeah.
you know,
that's
anything
become like
that.
they're just trolling that you guys on
Yeah.
that one.
There was a guy for ages that would ask for ginger snaps every
Ginger
single
snaps,
time.
yeah.
Ginger snap, which is a great film, you know, good Canadian sort of classic horror there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the situation is. I just know that he seemed to have stopped. Like basically, he wore himself out. He asked us seemingly every week for about a year or two, and then he
Really?
just went silent. So
I know
Yeah.
Shout Factory brought out Ginger Snaps, so that was a long time ago.
well, that might have been what silenced him. Then I don't know. Maybe he's satisfied with that.
He finally got
Yeah.
his cookies. He got his ginger snaps. He was like,
He
all
got
right,
his ginger snaps.
we're good now.
That was the only movie he wanted to see from Arrow. You guys really let him down.
Pretty much.
You let him down. All he wanted was ginger snaps in his life, you know? So sad.
Well, we didn't want to lose him. We figured if we put out ginger snaps,
Hey.
he wouldn't be a customer anymore. So
See?
Yep, there you go. You know, it's kind of funny, but the one movie that I have been campaigning for years is not even a horror movie. It's a movie called Blooded and Blood Out from like 1993. If you've ever seen that, it's like an LA gang story movie. Never released
No,
on
I
anything,
haven't.
but a crappy VHS to DVD transfer. It's a fantastic film. No,
Who's in it?
Nowhere. Nobody really known. It's
Jim
really low.
Brown,
Yeah.
Jim
Will
Brown.
Smith.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
No, nobody's in there.
No.
But you know, Blood and Blood is this like it's a very long movie. It's like like 2.5
you're
hours.
talking about the Danny Trejo flick, right?
Danny Trejo, yeah, where
Yeah,
it's
Danny's in that.
yeah, a guy goes to prison, and it's about like these like multi-generation story of like LA gang members, and it's got a huge cult following of people, especially in the United States, and it's one that nobody's ever brought out. If you ever watch the DVD, it's so horrible. It's like a VHS upscale to DVD. It's so bad.
Wow.
It's
Okay. I'll have to look for it online. It's just
We'll send you
Blood in,
you
Blood
a
out.
list of
Blood
all
in,
of our
Blood out.
titles.
I'll send you a
we
list.
want you to get on
Yeah,
top
please.
of. And,
Definitely.
if we can
Definitely.
get these out by like if we can get all these out by the end of 2021, that'd be great. You know, we're
Yeah.
Just in
we're
time
good.
for Christmas.
Yeah, we're ready.
absolutely. Yeah.
so there is a question here from Demetrios Patsiaris. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. He says, "What are some of your favorite boutique labels? Do you have any
nice.
favorites besides
Okay.
Arrow or
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've mentioned a few already.
Arrow's number
you know,
one?
I mean,
we know that.
well, you know, of course, but I mean, obviously, we're all fans of what Criterion does, and they kind of set the standard for the kind of boutique, kind of specialist label that we all kind of followed. In fact, when Fran Simeone hired me to come to Arrow, I think we sort of agreed that our approach was going to be kind of a cult Criterion. You know, we were going to give these films the same kind of quality, investment, and presentation, and contextual extras, and everything else, and make these definitive versions of what we felt were canon films, just not in the traditional canon. You know, and I think, you know, it took a few years to kind of see that, but reach its kind of, you know, fruition. But I think we did achieve that, and I think that a lot of other labels are doing similar great work in that regard. I mean, we're fans of Synapse, we're fans of Severin, we're fans of Agfa, we're fans of Vinegar Syndrome. Are doing amazing work. I really like the Vinegar Syndrome distributed new label, Fun City Editions. Which I think is sort of the brainchild of my friend Jonathan Hertzberg, because they have put out, I think, 3 releases so far. They've put out Alphabet City, they've put out I Start Counting, and they've just put out,
Jeremy. I think it was Jeremy. They brought
Jeremy.
up.
Yes.
Jeremy,
yeah. Sorry.
And they're getting ready to do Walking the Edge is coming out soon too. So
that's right. Yeah. I mean, I know that it got great plans, and it's just everything they're doing in terms of their presentation and their packaging and everything else, just really lovely. So really support the work they're doing. Over here, you know, good labels as well. BFI, who I used to work with. I used to I was with BFI for about 10 years. Indicator, Powerhouse label, are doing fantastic work with their titles and box sets. Their Hammer box sets are just continue to kind of amaze, and their Columbia Noir sets, and they put out just, you know, beautifully packaged. It's funny because I used to work with Masters of Cinema, Eureka, as well.
Okay.
And the guy who started that label, Nick Wrigley, is one of the brainchildren behind Powerhouse, and took that same kind of idea of to booklets and packaging and cover art and everything, and just move that to Indicator. So they're doing great work. It's funny because everybody at Indicator, practically, I used to work with at either Eureka or the BFI. So it's all a very small pool, kind of a almost incestuous pool of DVD and Blu-ray related people who all know each other. 88 Films doing a lot of great genre work, and
Films,
you know, Hong Kong cinema and that sort of stuff. I mean, the list goes on. I think that the quality of the labels, particularly in the US and the UK, are second to none. I don't think that I'm not seeing many labels from other parts of the world approach this kind of, you know, and I think that's just because the markets for physical are not quite what they are in our territories. So yeah, I think people are doing great work. I'm sure I'm leaving. Oh, well, I should mention both Second Sight, who very small label, but they're responsible for one of the biggest sets of last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn.
I mean,
woo, it changed my life.
It's a brick. It's massive, and they're
And another one we couldn't get in the United States. You had to import it because United States
oh, yeah.
we've got weird licensing rights with the Romero films, as everybody knows, with Rubenstein. So that's another story. Though.
Everything about the Romero licensing is weird,
Yeah.
So I know I'm well familiar with that. But Second Run as well, for people who are interested in world cinema. They put out some fantastic releases: Asian cinema, Eastern European cinema, all that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of great work, and a lot of great uh, just people still working in physical media. These things are. I mean, streaming is great. I mean, I've got Netflix, I've got Disney Plus because I've got a 9-year-old, and I've got Amazon Prime and all, and we have Mubi over here, which is sort of like Criterion Channel or something in States. But the point is that all these streaming things are great, but they're not covering the full gamut of what physical media can do. You're not seeing a real place for these kinds of archival genre type. Although I should mention, Arrow has its own streaming platform now, in which a lot of the stuff that we do, from horror to giallo to new films to spaghetti westerns, a lot of it's on there now too. But I like the idea that physical is still sort of leading the charge, at least where we're concerned, and all the other labels that I talked about. So yeah, big fan. A lot of great people doing great work.
Yeah, that's important though, to still have the physical media, because streaming's great, just to watch a film. But if you really want to see this film, the restoration that, the beautiful work that someone like you has done, that's really the way. Because when you're streaming, the quality can go up and down, and
it's not full. I mean, streaming's compressed. It's not full like the disc. And
that's
everything.
Right. And I think those who appreciate that are the people who buy it, as well as the collectability factor, which is why you can imagine the limited edition kind of template is so important. I mean, it's not just we're trying to sell more copies and fancy packaging. It's the fact that these things actually pay for the restorations. They pay for these. If we weren't able to sell physical in this way, we couldn't afford to do restorations at the level that we do. So one thing helps the other, and keeps it all going.
Definitely.
Very, 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 very true.
Well, there's just so many people that are joining us. I want to say thank you to everybody that's joining us. If you're just now dropping in, we've been talking to James White. We've been on about an hour now, so or a little over an hour. We're not going to hold James up too much longer. What we would what we would like to do though is make sure that we can invite you back sometime, because this has been fascinating, and I'd love to keep digging in and finding out more about what you do.
No, absolutely.
I'd love to have you back for something like specific. Like if you guys have a specific release coming out, I'd love to have you guys back to promote it and talk about, what was done to that. Because as you mentioned earlier, I would love to see like special features, like in a Blu-ray, overviewing this kind of stuff, like all this work that you guys put into it. Sometimes that's missing. So it'd be great to have you back.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly titles coming up this year where it would probably be good to have the producer on as well as me, and talk about all the decisions that were made about all the different extras and versions, and right down to how the cover art was constructed, and because it's I'm not involved in all these different processes, but I'm witness to them, and it's fascinating sometimes to see the evolution of what goes into the creation of the cover art, the menu design, all these different aspects of a release. Because I'm 100% involved in the creation of the masters. The rest of it I'm not, but I'm I'm glad that I'm a witness to that evolution, because it can be fascinating. And Arrow is still, like I say, a fairly small place, so we all everybody throws their opinions around. Everybody can say if they like something or they hate something, and the producers can take that for what they will.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'd be up for that for sure.
I would love to start seeing special features with you guys behind the scenes, answering some questions, detailing a little bit of the technical behind the scenes stuff, what maybe you ran into, what went well, what didn't go well.
I agree.
But maybe I'm just a giant nerd. maybe
I'm a
that's
No, I
nerd.
think
I love it. I'm like,
yeah.
tell
No,
me.
I'm always up for it. What I try not to do is too much repetition, just because I think people get sick if it's the same thing over and over again. I mean, film restoration is like I say, each film presents its own set of challenges, but there is a lot of the same sort of work process that goes on, and there's only so many shots of one of us standing by a film scanner that can it could just get a bit redundant after a while. But I think it would be good to focus on those films that present unique things in the restoration and talk about those. So
Unique
yeah,
challenges
I'm
and
always up
stuff.
for
Yeah.
it. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's a craft and it's an art, and you're obviously an artisan in this area, and we thank you for that. You make a lot of our dreams come true.
He does.
Seeing
Oh,
these
geez.
films,
Dreamweaver.
usually a lot better than we ever saw. I can remember seeing some of these movies at the drive-in, and the prints looked like they were already 40 years old.
Yeah.
So
All crackly.
Well, yeah. Well, one needs to bear in mind every time you put it on a film print on a projector, it dies just a little bit more. So I mean, it's a full-on physical assault. That's what it's made for, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Which is why, when we're restoring a film, the last thing we want to use is a film that's been playing in a theater for a few years.
that 35 millimeter print that's been through a projector 2,300 times. You're like, oh, it's not
Exactly.
gonna work. It's
That's
all like
why-
super light and red.
Yeah.
Exactly.
that's why it's getting so much more important that we get Nail Gun Massacre on an 8K print.
4K HDR.
I'm thinking 8K. 8K Nail
thinking
Gun.
8K.
Yeah.
The first
Yeah,
8K
IMAX.
release.
Yeah, sure.
Could we
Why
do
not?
that with
You know,
16
just-
millimeter? Could we get a good 8K?
Why not? Why not? Let's do it.
Yeah, sure. It's a print, you said?
It's a print. That's all it is.
Yeah, sure.
It's better
I
than the
mean,
videotape, right?
If budget,
James is
Speaking
like-
speaking of
James is like, I
problems
gotta
with
go now.
elements,
James is like, I gotta leave now, guys. See you guys later. Have a great day.
no, hey, if budget is no obstacle, clearly this is important work. We need to preserve it for posterity and the bias.
well,
Lloyd's
yeah.
like, I got $132. Let's do it.
the Library of Congress has been calling, and they really want a good print for their archives. So,
Excellent. Well, they should fund. They could probably create a new one at their own lab. So.
oh yeah, we'll hit them up.
Yeah.
We'll hit them
You're
up.
good-
They'll
you're
fund
good
it.
there.
All right.
Oh.
What, Charles, do you have any more questions today for James?
I'm gonna let James go because he's been on with us. We normally gonna do an hour, but I'm so fascinated. I'm gonna keep making him, talk about movies that aren't out yet. So
I'm in no hurry. I mean, it's up to you guys. It's just Sunday over here afternoon, so it's not much to do. But
Right.
yeah, no. If you happy to do this again sometime. If you want to chat restoration some more.
Oh, thank you. We'd love to have you
Would
on.
love it.
And like Charles said, maybe we can jump in and do kind of a newer title, something that's just getting
Something coming out.
released to kind of help promote it,
Yeah.
and and talk to people about the process that it went through. That'd be great.
No, for sure.
I'm super
sure.
interested in that stuff. I've had
Yeah.
a blast listening to you today.
yeah, same here.
That's
I
great.
mean,
No,
I'm a huge
appreciate
fan
it.
of physical media, as Lloyd knows. So is Lloyd. And when we see releases like Demons and stuff, I mean, yeah, I love this stuff, but I like to know more about like what goes into it, because there's so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things
Well-
that go into. It doesn't just come out. People realize that you don't go walk into work. You're like, all right, well, here's Demons. Now we're done. Okay, let's we're done.
It's
If only
lots
it were
of
that
work.
easy. Yeah. No, it is. But like I say, it's a totally group effort, and I think the passion and the dedication is what's needed to keep that going at that level. So
Yeah.
it's fandom on the level that you're talking about is what keeps it going. So
Maybe if we start harassing Michael Mann, we can get the keep out finally. Has anybody got his home number? We're gonna start calling him at like 2 a.m. every day.
yeah.
Mike,
Good
Speaking
luck
of
with
home
that.
numbers, James, why don't you go ahead and give us your home number so people can
Yeah.
call you and
About
let you
those
know what
releases,
titles that they're looking for.
You-
Or if they're
Well,
upset
like-
about a release that because they're crazy, be like, here, let's call him and here you go.
No problem. The thing is, I know we've got a landline, but I've never used it. Like everybody else. It's so
it
welcome
just
to
rings and goes to voicemail.
Yeah.
You're like, what is that?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, is
Uh.
there anything else, James, that you want to throw out there? Is there anything you want to talk about before we go? Or
Oh, just to say, I mean, well, just because of where you are and everything, I have to say it was probably my time living in Texas, both in high school in Dallas and going to UT Austin in the 90s, that probably provided sparked my real interest in going into film as a profession, and film preservation in particular. So yeah, I owe Texas a lot in that regard, and would look forward to getting back there someday. It's been a long time.
We need to get you out to Frightmare.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, absolutely. When we can all get on planes again, looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll get you out here and we'll set you up near a production lab so you can get to work on nail gun.
Yeah, get to work on
as long as I can get some good barbecue while I'm there, that's the main thing.
Oh, barbecue! We can do barbecue.
We can do barbecue.
All right. Good.
Lloyd will chain you to a chair and he'll give you his 16mm print of nail gun and it's a barbecue. It won't let you leave.
Absolutely. No, it's sure. I mean, it sounds like a deal to me. So that's only fair.
Lloyd, you got to tell him it's got to be in 3D too. You can't.
Oh yeah,
it's got to be.
We need
3D.
a 3D version as well. 3D 8K.
8K 3D.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that should only take a couple hours to convert that, right?
2 hours tops, maybe 3.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up today. Can't thank you enough for coming on today, James. Like I said earlier, it's been my honor to be able to hear what you guys go through. We want everybody to hear that too, and know what the process is. And we appreciate it very much. Thank you for your time today.
No, my pleasure. Good talking to you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So all
right. So we're gonna let you go, and then we're gonna close out the show. And we'll get in touch. We'll talk soon about doing another show or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever you want to do.
Excellent.
Whatever you want to do. And if something's coming up that you think would be fun for us to jump on and talk about, because you may know before us, shoot. We got our contact. Shoot us an email. We'll make it happen.
Absolutely, we'll do.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
You have a good day.
My pleasure. You too. Right. Take care now.
All
Stay
right,
safe. All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
I'll keep
all right.
So I'm gonna keep harassing Arrow about all these movies. I've been harassing Arrow about Blood Beach and Blood In, Blood Out for like years now. Like I've been harassing Louise about Blood In, Blood Out for like a year. I'm like, all right, Louise, where's my Blood In, Blood Out?
You are relentless, Charles.
Louise is. I remember at first Louise was like, I don't even know what that movie is, and I was like, look, you're gonna understand what it is.
You're gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today because I need these movies. But yeah, no, I love listening to.
Look, I got you in widescreen, Charles. Look at that.
Oh man, I'm in Panovision 6000.
Look at that.
Oh, in Panovision,
I could work for Arrow. Look what I just did.
Look how wide I am.
I just framed this screen, y'all.
Charles in widescreen, new and improved Charles in widescreen. No, yeah, it's great getting to talk to them because there's so much stuff that we wonder about these releases, and that's everybody knows Charles loves talking about these movies, especially when they come out. It's stuff like what Arrow does, and there are other companies that do it, but like Arrow is really good about laying out that we did this and this came from the original negative, this was the original sound elements, we did this and this to it, and that's what I love. That's kind of what I was mentioning is sometimes we see releases and they're like, oh, this is a brand new transfer, and that's all it says, and you're like, well, from what? A VHS, from some tacos you found out in the street? I mean, what is it? Yeah. What did it come from?
Well, I think it's just important that everybody know how much work goes into this, and that, we don't take it for granted because, these are actually people out there working hard.
Oh, so
it's their job, to give us a great print. And sometimes, like you said, they're only human.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, stuff is great. I mean, that can be said for like, we talked about Demons a lot, but I mean, this sold out like instantly. And that's because people were really desiring this, and Demons is one that of course has been out before, but you do a good resto on it, people will come. Even movies that have already been out on Blu-ray, if you do a resto, people will come running, because sometimes the movies released on Blu-ray by some of the studios are just dropped on there from a DVD master or something. They don't really do much to them, so we want these movies.
So I want to thank right here.
Awesome show.
Oh, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for the $5 super duper chat.
Absolutely. Thank you for that $5 super chat. We appreciate that. Every time you guys tip any kind of amount, that goes directly into the production of the show. so we can keep bringing you guys great content. And that's what we're trying to do. Um, Speaking of you guys, I wanted to mention I noticed a couple of new people, and maybe you weren't new, maybe I just don't see you as often, but Dirk, Jason Hall, Jesus Franco. Wow. We had Jesus Franco watching today. Uh, Demetrios Patsiaris joined us today, plus all of our normal, usual folks that we love seeing all the time. Richard Nettleton, who just tipped us. Chrissy Gilliland is here. Richard Nettleton, Travis Brown.
All of our good people, man.
All of
Some of our
faithful
Patreon supporters,
folks,
our faithful Patreon
Patreons.
lovers. You know, we
lots
do
of
this
folks
for you
here.
guys.
I didn't get to mention everybody's name, but we want to thank everybody who joined us today. Thank you for jumping on and watching the show. I think it was good. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope that it's something you want to see in the future, because I think we're certainly planning on bringing more of that kind of content, behind the scenes type stuff.
Yeah, you know, I really wanted to do this, and you know, I was after our last Arrow show with Mike and Louise, who handle a lot of the distribution stuff on the distro side. You know, I was talking to them, and I really wanted to start learning more about some of this back end stuff, and we worked it out and managed to get a great guy on to talk to us from Arrow, and I'm real happy. So yeah, hopefully you guys like this. If you did, let us know, and I'm gonna work on getting some more of these. This is a lot of fun.
And I do want to mention a few other people. We're streaming this on like 8 or 9 different platforms today, y'all. So
yeah.
If I didn't see everybody's comments, I apologize, but I want to mention Julie Brock, Elijah Taylor, Cass Wynn, and Eric Sherrard, watching us on Facebook. Thanks for joining. Leave us comments, like the videos, also share them if you could, and let everybody know about the show. Anybody like-minded folks like yourself who are interested in this kind of content, let them know that we are streaming this kind of stuff, and we want to see you all here, as many people as possible.
We do. And Robert Hernandez said, agreed, blood in, blood out. Yeah, everybody, I'm not lying when I say blood in, blood out, because I have mentioned blood in, blood out on a couple of boutique forums, and people went ape shit because people want that movie. They really do it. I'm not lying, guys. I'm pushing people to bring it out. So hopefully I can be part of making that finally come out by making it more visible to people.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap up today's show. Once again, thank you all for joining us. You've been watching a special edition of Frightmare HQ with Loyd Fryer and Charles Doze. That's Charles. And our guest today was James White from Arrow Video. Once again, thank you to Arrow Video and James and the entire team for joining and for all that you do for us collectors out there.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm headed over to Frightmare Collectibles right now. We'll be open until 6 p.m. if you want to come out and shop or just come by and visit. Would love to see you at the shop today. Got a lot of new merchandise. We're getting ready for the upcoming spring slasher camp that's coming up April 3rd. Do not forget about that.
Glad to be here. I got y'all on my notifications now. Me and my wife are coming in September.
Oh, I'd like to say Dirk Jason Hall just gave us a $5 super chat as well. So thank you, Dirk.
The computer was reading it. Dirk said he gave us a $5 tip, and he said, glad to be here. I got y'all on my notifications now. Me and my wife are coming in September. Slash and Cast on YT referred, y'all.
Oh,
all right.
Nice.
Love it. Thank you. Thanks to the Slash and Cast for the referral. And thanks for the $5 tip, Dirk, right?
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah. If you guys like this, go ahead and jump over on YouTube, just go ahead and follow us, subscribe to our videos, because we do go live quite a bit. Well, all of our shows are live shows, and we do Week in Horror. We've made it through 4 decades of Year in Horror. I mean, we do Year in Horror. We've made it through 4 decades, which is a lot of shows, but we're starting on the 1960s on Wednesday, which would be a fun show.
We got so much coming up, you guys. I can't even think about that far in the future, but we've just
got a
got all
lot.
kinds of stuff we're currently evolving. So,
Yep.
all right, I think we're gonna let you guys go now. We've kept you long enough. Thanks again for
guys.
enjoying us. Yeah,
Thanks for joining us on Sunday.
Thank you for joining us. Not
Thank you for
us.
enjoying us, Lloyd.
Thank you for enjoying it.
Woo!
All right, guys, peace out.
All right.
We're gonna leave y'all up to it. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend and a great Sunday. We'll see you as soon as we see you. Bye bye.